Howdy, and thank you for choosing the Organized Bear to meet your spreadsheet needs. These have been designed by me, a fully licensed CPA, with you, a creative business owner, in mind. I'm a creator myself, so I understand your needs. Again, thanks for using the Organized Bear, and today in this video we will be going over just how to use your seller spreadsheet. We are starting with the summary tab. This is where your annual summary can be found. It's got columns by month, so you can see a monthly breakout, and then you've got your total for the year over here, so you can see your year-to-date totals. So we'll be going over in detail the information that's found here. Some of it will look a little bit different than your format that you've got downloaded, just because I've tailored this to my business versus the example that you have. So we'll just kind of dive in and get going. So in this section up here, column that I've labeled A, if you're following along in the document, is the sales section or the revenue section. So it'll show you what you've generated in sales for each month. So in my version, as you can see, I mostly use Etsy and then I do some local stuff. So I've gotten rid of the Square and the PayPal. If you sell on Shopify, please get with me and I will create a tab for you for your import if you can provide me with your CSV. I have not used Shopify yet and I don't know anybody who has, so I've not been able to create that file yet, as it's hard to get a CSV without actually having an account, but I'll be glad to do that for you. But we'll go over exactly how to import later on in the video. But there's an import tab for each sale. Local, in the example I provided, you enter in manually, but I have created a separate tab for myself just because I like to see some of the detail. So if you want that extra tab over here for your local sales, which I'll show it to you when we talk about the Etsy CSV import and PayPal imports, I can show you the tab that I created. Otherwise, you just manually input it. It depends on what you want and how much detail you want to see. But once you import that information, it'll automatically import over here. The way it does it is with this fancy formula. Don't get too caught up in that. You don't have to mess with it. But basically what this formula says, which is here as well as down here, is go find my total Etsy sales. So it goes to the Etsy CSV tab, and then it uses this fancy formula to say, find it for anything that's got a heading of January, and so on. So just so you can see, I'll show you the tab and we'll go over how to import it. But so it says find anything on this tab that lines up with this heading. So I've got this typed in here. And again, I'll go over how to get this info in here, but it says go find on this tab any sales for December. So I had one for $22.50, and that's how that information gets here. Again, I built myself one for local. So in August, I did a couple things for some people at work. And so it subtotals all of those up to $101. And so that's how it gets there. So this next section I've labeled as materials. So this is where you'll kind of capture all the direct material costs that you use buying your product. So for me, I do woodworking. So, any of my building materials, any of my paint, I make burned signs. And so I've created templates. So I use a lot of sheet metal to create my templates. So I created a separate category to know exactly how much sheet metal I was buying. So again, customize these as you want. You can add rows. The rule of thumb is you want to be detailed enough that it gives you a good idea of where you're going, but you don't want hundreds of items here where you can lose sight of exactly how your business is doing. I like to keep it short enough so that I can see net income down at the bottom. Again, we'll talk about that in just a minute. But I like being able to see everything. So I want to, make it detailed so I know where things are, but concise enough that I get a good big picture. When we get to the monthly tabs, we'll talk about how you can be more detailed in these categories if you need to be, so that way you can, you know, understand where things are going. But on this tab, you want to kind of keep it as a big picture. But again, you can add more rows if needed. So you would just kind of click where you want. So in the example, you've got some extra spaces. I took out the extra spaces, but so in that section where it says enter extra rows as needed, select that row. You can right click and say insert. That's one method. I'm going to hit Control Z for undo, or click that row and then hit Control plus, and that'll add the extra row. Again, these shortcuts are, I'm using Windows Excel. The shortcuts will be a little bit different on, if you're a Mac user. Um, just be aware of that. I am going to use some of the Excel shortcuts for Windows. Key thing to remember is Control plus is if you're using a number key portion of a keyboard. If you don't have a number key and you want to insert that row using Control plus, you'll have to do Control Shift plus, because the equal sign is the default sign. So you got to do Shift to get to the plus. And then the last method for inserting a row is, again, select that row, come to the insert, or on the home tab, you can do insert here, or again, you can go to insert. Oh, it's not on the insert tab, so it's only on the home tab. So that's how you can add extra rows as you need them. So then we get down to, and again, it's all summarized based off of these monthly tabs down here, and we'll talk about those in the next segment. Then we come down to the selling expenses. So this would be things that you incur to sell your product, but don't necessarily go into your product. So credit card fee, I've got the standard ones listed: credit card fees, listing fees, transaction fees, any postage you pay, and then any other kind of expenses you would incur to actually sell your product, but don't actually go in the product. I've got a little caveat here, just I do have a pricing calculator. So check that out if you want to make sure you get those kinds of fees included in your price to cover your basis. It's always good to remember that, so that way when you charge for your product, you're covering all of your cost. This section, so then my last section is going to be my general business expenses section. This would be where you put any of your advertising and marketing, office supplies, any other services you might incur. So like if you've got website development or maintenance, or maybe a logo design, any other expenses you incur to run your business that aren't directly related to product creation would go down in this section. Rent, maybe you've got a building that you rent out, just things like that. That's what you would put down in this section. And then lastly, you've got section E, which is your net income. So this, or you also hear it called profit and loss. This shows your overall performance. Positive numbers are good. That means you brought in more money than you spent. So I had a couple of positive months in 2019. Overall, I was positive. So I started in August, so that's why you don't see anything in the first 7 months. So I had a couple bad months. Some of it's going to be timing, just when you may spend more in materials up front and then you have sales later on. Especially if you're doing things like craft fairs, you might spend a lot leading up to the craft fair, and then you don't spend anything that month. So some of it's just gonna be timing. So that's why year to date is always helpful. Don't get too caught up on a monthly basis, because there could be timing differences that swing things. Obviously, you want every month to be positive, but it may not always happen. Other things to keep in mind on the summary tab are that these categories here flow through to the monthly tabs via a drop-down menu. So again, create them as you want, whatever you want, and just know that in the template I've given you, they are a drop-down menu, so they will flow through to the monthly tabs. And so when we get to the monthly tabs in just a minute, you'll see how that flows through. But just um, so again, customize this to what you want, and you'll be able to select those on the monthly tab. So you won't necessarily have to type them in every single time unless you really feel like it. I can give you that version, but I've created a drop-down menu using this column, so that way on the monthly tabs you won't have to retype them every single time. So just know that you can do that. When we're inserting rows, if you do add extra rows, you can, so again, once you add the extra row, all you've got to do is copy this formula down. I'd select the whole row and then just use the fill down portion, and it will automatically copy that formula. There's no need to go to the other tab and change anything. The way this is built, it automatically knows what to go find. So again, it's this formula is telling you, go find this category on this tab, is what that's saying. Go find this category on this tab. So when you pull that formula down, it says the same thing. So no need to worry about, oh hey, I added an extra row, now I got to go find it on the individual monthly tabs. It will automatically populate that. And when we get to the monthly tabs, I'll show you exactly why I built it this way and why it's important. But you can move these around. It doesn't matter. So let's say, I came in and I decided and said, wait, I'd really like my building materials to the first thing. So that was control space, by the way, that selects shift space selects the whole row. But let's say I wanted to move that to the first. It's still going to do the same thing. It's going to go find this category on this other row. And that equals all the same. You will have to be careful if you move it to the top. You will have to adjust this formula here. But as long as you move it within the row, you don't have to worry about it. And again, the importance of selecting that extra space one that I talked about, you won't have to adjust this formula. It will automatically get that for you. I'll show you that I'll select this one and I'll add a row here. So it automatically adjusts that formula. So that's why I added that extra space. And I always like to add a row above that extra space, just so you don't have to adjust the formula. Now, if you move it to the top, you will have to adjust. And lastly, when you get to the end of the year, so like I'm at the end of the year now, this spreadsheet can be used year after year. You just have to go in and delete the information off each individual tabs. So you just come in. I'm going to leave the Etsy information, those categories there, just because I know I'm going to have those every time. So you just come in and you just delete your information. So they're not dated formulas. You don't have to update anything every year. You just come in and delete your stuff. I'll come to my import tab. I'm going to delete that. Nope, I'm going to delete my local tab. Right there, I hit Control Shift and the down arrow key, and that went to the very end of my data set. I'm just going to hit delete. We'll come back to the summary tab, and now we're ready for 2020. So I'm going to change that to 2020, and we're good to go. So again, you use this file year after year. No need to get with me about a new file, because it all works. They're not dated formulas, so there's no dates in there. So you just start over and you're good to go. All right, so now let's take a look at the monthly tabs. These tabs, which you have one for each month, are where you will input all of the individual purchases you have made during the month. The information that is input on these tabs will automatically flow back to the Summary tab that we already looked at. These tabs can be filtered so that you can quickly sort through the information for comparison purposes as needed. Using these buttons here, so these are the filters. So the expense category, which is column A, is probably the most important column here that you must complete. This is the column that will determine where on the Summary tab the expenses will appear. The name you use here must match exactly to the way it's written on the first tab. Otherwise, the formula on the Summary tab won't work. To help facilitate this, I've created a drop-down menu. So you just select the drop-down, find which category you selected on the Summary tab, and then off you go. If you don't like the drop-down function, get with me and I can remove it for you. But I find it very useful just so that way you don't worry about misspellings, because even little things like spaces will mess up the formula on the Summary tab. Category B, this is optional and can be used to help you determine where your money's going. In my example, which is for my business, I've typed in, so I have the main category of paints and adhesives, but then I typed in glaze because I use a glaze clear coat. So this will allow me to type in this versus maybe if I bought some stain, which you'll see in just a minute. When I enter a couple other expenses, I'll still use this main category, but I'll use a different subcategory. So it would allow me to see where exactly I'm spending money. Then you have date in column C. This is the date you purchased the item. Won't really impact anything, so if it's not exact, it's okay. As you can see, the Etsy fees that I'll enter in just a second, I just use the month end, even though it's all throughout the month, but it's just easier just to use the month end. Vendor, this is who you bought it from. Again, if you're not sure exact spelling, whatever, just put in what you want. It's just, again, it's a way that you can see exactly who you might be spending your money most with. If you're spending a lot of money with one customer, you might be able to work out some kind of deal. A lot of times they give frequent customer discounts. You might say, hey, look, I'm spending a lot of money with you. Would you be willing to give me a discount for, a certain volume? Description, again, just a general description of what you may have purchased. Just for more information if you need it. If you want to leave it blank, you can leave it blank. Payment type, this is just how your money is being paid. I like to use it just to see exactly what card or how I'm paying for things. Column G, this is where you actually enter the amount of money you spent, so obviously pretty important. You should include any sales taxes listed on your receipt. If your state is one that you can get it back and you want to track it separately, then I would just create a separate line so that way you can track your sales tax separately for tax purposes. For me, I don't track it separately, so I just include it in the total. If you have a receipt where you've purchased multiple different categories on one line, then just, for example, this one right here, I purchased all of that in one transaction, so I broke it out on two separate lines so that way I could kind of track the different purchases that I made. The glaze coat was really expensive, so I broke it out separately from just some other miscellaneous things that I bought. Other info, again, just more information if you didn't get it in the other columns, then you can add in some more detail. So again, the filter buttons, you can click on these and sort. So you can just click and say, hey, I just want to see, anytime I bought glaze. And so you click that and it'll do that. So now I'm going to get this information from Etsy. I'll show you where that is, following the screenshots that I've provided. So I'm already logged in, so we'll go over to Etsy. We go to Finances, Payment Account, and then we come down to the Monthly Statements section. So if you're still on this month, you can use it there, but normally I'm going backwards. So I come down to say, see all monthly statements. I'm working on February. So I come over to February. So I'll plug in and kind of do this to make it a little easier so I can see all of it at one time. So I had 260 in listing fees, 7.30 in marketing, 63.83 for shipping, and 14 in the transaction fees. So that's how you get to the Etsy information. And then now I'm going to enter in my last 2 receipts for the month, just so you can kind of see how that works. So I've got one here where I bought some doorknobs for a item that I make. So I'm going to call that as part of building materials. I'm going to say doorknobs. February 8th. And that was from Hobby Lobby. Use my debit card for 26.41. And my last one was at Lowe's. See? If you do end up doing that, just so you're aware, it will just give you a message that says it doesn't match because I didn't use the drop down function. So if you're using the drop down function, you have to use it. You can't manually type it in unless it matches exactly. Say paints and adhesives. I bought stain. On the last day of the month. Do that once every 4 years. Debit card. What you saw me do right there is I used the shortcut for fill down, which is Control D, so it just copies the cell above it and pulls it down. It's just a quick little shortcut that I've learned over the years, so I knew I used the same thing, so I just did Control D to use the same thing from the cell above. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort this by categories just so I can show you why these categories are important and how it matches up with the first tab. And then I'm going to show you exactly why I built the formulas on the first tab the way I did. So we're going to sort this by category. Sort A to Z. All right, and so we can see in my buildings category, building materials category, we have a total of 106.41. So we're going to go back to the summary tab. You can see it says 106.41 right here. So now down at the bottom, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you materials. I'm going to say equals sum of these, close parentheses. All right, so 106.41. So we got those two totals. Now watch what happens when I sort this again, let's say by date. So see, now they're in a different order. They're not in the exact same spots. But up here, my building material still equals the 106.41 that we had before. But down here, my formula amount has changed. Now it says we spent 136.39 on building materials. So by using the formula that I built and described on the summary when we went over the summary tab, it allows you to sort and filter on these tabs any way you want. So I mean, we can do the same thing here. We can say, just show me miscellaneous. Sometimes when you do that, this will go away, but it still shows up because it's still there. But you can sort, you can filter, you can change it as many times as you want, and no matter what, it will always stay the same. So see, I changed it again, that amount changed. We sort by amount, different number. But no matter what, this number here stays the same. And that's why I've built this the way I've built it. So that way you can enter in receipts in any order you want. You don't have to have them summarized by category. You don't have to go, okay, let me find all my building materials, plug them in, so that way they're all in a line. You can enter them in any order, any date order, any amount order, any vendor. It doesn't matter. As long as this column is created properly, it will flow over here to where you want. Now we're going to take a look at the sales tax tab along with the sales by state tabs. The sales by state will just be a quick look as it's mostly informational. So we're going to start with the sales tax tab. So again, the purpose of this tab is to help you file your monthly or quarterly taxes as required by your state. Little to no information is needed to be input by you here, as it all pulls from the Etsy CSV tab and the PayPal tab. The only thing that you need to input is any local sales that you have and whether or not you collected sales tax on those sales. So we have two different sections on this tab. The top section is for states that charge tax on the shipping. So if you have to collect sales tax on shipping, you would look at this section. And then below that, we have a section for states that do not charge sales tax on shipping. So once you determine which section your state requires, whether or not you have to charge tax on shipping or not, you can hide the other section of the worksheet. So I live in Texas, so our state charges tax on shipping. So I'm going to hide this other section by highlighting the rows, right click, and hide. So now the only thing I have to look at is this section because that's all I need. So up here in cell D3, you will enter the 2-letter abbreviation for your state. This will change what information pulls from the Etsy CSV and PayPal tabs. Based off of that, again, this SUMIF formula uses this cell to go find the total sales for that state on these other tabs. So based off of changing this, then this tab will automatically import. So for example, again, we live in Texas, but let me look at our tab here. And Kentucky. So that's the first one, so I'll just use that. So I'm going to type in KY, and you'll see that all these numbers change. So I collected no sales tax was collected for Kentucky because obviously I live in Texas, so it didn't charge Kentucky. But you can see that the numbers down at the bottom changed down here. So the row 12 doesn't change because that's total sales, but in-state sales changed as you saw. So again, if you charged sales tax on your local sales, you'll enter those amounts here. Again, if you so desire, on the local tab that's been created, you can create a sales tax. I can create a sales tax column in there if you're collecting it on local sales, and we can make it where it automatically populates. Again, if that's something you need, just let me know and I will work with you on that. And then parts D and E, we went over that before. So D is the top section, which is for states charging tax on shipping, and section E is for states that do not charge tax on shipping. And then we're going to take a quick look at the sales by state. Again, this is purely informational, just so you can get a picture of where your sales are going, by state and by amount, just if you want to have that information. If not, you can always hide this tab, and the way you would do that is coming down to the tab, right clicking, and saying hide. If you ever want it back, just right click again and click unhide. Next, let's go over just how to import your sales information using the Etsy CSV tab, or it'll be the same process for PayPal or Square. So this will get you the information for this section. So we're going to move over to the Etsy CSV tab. So this is where you will import your Etsy orders information. So in the screenshot below and in your file, you'll notice that many columns are hidden. So see, I go from D to H here. All information will be pasted in when you follow these instructions. So don't worry about the hidden rows, it will put it in the right column. So in order to get your file, let's go to Etsy. We go to Settings, Options, and go to Download Data. Scroll down to the Orders section. Select the orders type, and then select which month you want. So I need February of 2020, and then download. If you want to save it somewhere, you can save it because you can always go back and get it. I just open it. And so we're going to click in cell A2 and grab all of this information. So I find the quickest way is Control Shift End, and that goes to the very end of it. And then Control C for copy. Go back to our financial spreadsheet, and then you want to click on cell B2 here. So that's, if it's the first one, you click in cell B2. So I'm going to paste that in, and it all goes where it needs to go. Now, when you come do this for the next month, you'll come down right below the last date, and that's where you would import it in that cell. That's where you go. So the next step is to assign the month. So because our headings are the 3-letter abbreviations for the month, I'm going to type in apostrophe FEB for February. Then we go back to our summary tab, and there you go. And that's it. Now again, I described the local tab. You can either manually input this. So I had one local sale for 250, or one buyer, but I've created a local sales tab where I like to track the details of it. So I entered that, and then the same thing, it uses that information and plugs it into here. Now I don't have PayPal, so I don't have an example that I can give you, but it's the exact same process on the PayPal tab that's been provided. So you go to PayPal and you download that information. And that is how you use your seller spreadsheet. If you have any questions, feel free to email me at the email address below, and I will be more than happy to answer all your questions and make sure this file works successfully for you. Thanks.